Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
You're watching Disruptive Investing News. And so I thought we'd start with VinFast. I'm sorry to keep harping on VinFast. That's the Vietnamese automaker. But they really asked to be in the spotlight with their upcoming SPAC.
So let's get into it. VinFast had shipped 999 of their electric SUVs, the VF8, to the U.S. in November.
So now the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, has issued a recall on all 999 of them, saying a software error may cause the malfunction head unit, so the MHU display, to go blank. A blank MHU display will not show critical safety information such as the speedometer or warning lights, which may increase the risk of a crash. Now, I hear you.
Can't VinFast just fix this with an over-the-air software update like Tesla does? Why are you making a big deal about this? And the answer is yes, VinFast can fix this with software. And in fact, VinFast already rolled out a software fix last Thursday and started notifying owners on Sunday.
But in my opinion, this is a big deal. So if your car's display can go blank while you're driving, that's not a good feeling. I mean, I've never had it happen on a Tesla. In fact, I was trying to remember if it ever happened at all. I think once on our Rivian, we had stopped to do an update and it went blank, and we technically had read that you can keep driving, but we're like, I am not driving while the screen is blank.
I mean, I've driven with my Tesla where you hold both buttons and it does a restart,
right,
where basically you don't see anything.
Right, but that's not recommended to do while you're driving.
Right.
And that's a restart.
You can do it while you drive if you're crazy enough like me to do that.
Right, and when you do it, it just doesn't feel good because you're used to seeing certain feedback from the car and now it's not there. And so I just think I would immediately lose faith in the car.
And as a potential customer, if I heard that this could happen, it would give me pause. It's not something that you want your potential customers thinking about when considering your vehicles.
But to me, there's even worse news that came out of this story. You see, VinFast just revealed that of those 999 VF8s, 735 of them are still sitting on their lot.
I thought they had pre-order reservations for all those cars.
I guess not. Or maybe if they did, reservation holders reconsidered. Only 111 of them are in customers' hands. 153 of them are in fleet service. I'm not sure what that means. Does it mean that VinFast owns them as showroom cars?
Or does it mean that companies like Uber or Hertz owns them?
I feel like if that were the case, we would have seen a press release from VinFast about some kind of partnership.
But think about that. Those 735 cars have been sitting on VinFast's lot for about 6 months.
That is not a good sign, and it makes sense.
Yeah, we've been saying this. Would you buy a new model from a new automaker, especially a company with only 4 service centers?
Right. I mean, because it's a big purchase. It's one of those purchases. I don't think that we think about this much because most of us know all of these auto brands by heart. You're very unlikely to go buy a new car if you don't really know that brand well. And what I mean is, like, Ford's been around 100 years, GM's been around 100 years. Tesla is a new brand. Still, many people don't even know what it is. In fact, our Rivian, which we drive around a lot, people are like, so what's that? And we're like,
who makes that?
It's a Rivian. And they're like, I know, but who makes it? And it's like, Rivian.
Rivian, right.
And they're like, I know, but what? And so, like, even though that's a brand that's been around for 10 years, people, if you don't know about it, you're not going to really think of it as a brand because, you know, you're thinking about service. You're thinking about, well, I need to know the reputation. I need to know that they're going to be around in a couple of years.
Well, and how amazing is it that Tesla was able to go from nothing to selling the most sold car in Q1 of this year? They went from, and they did a pretty interesting business model, one that could really only be accomplished in the time in which they were doing it with no competitors like they had. Tesla was making the Roadster back in 2008 with no competition.
I think that VinFast might be kind of forgetting how hard it is to enter a new market. They're in Vietnam. They're a well-known brand there. They've been making cars there a little bit longer. But when you go to a new market, just think about this for a second. If you're worried that the company might go out of business, then this $50,000 or $80,000 car you just bought could be almost worthless because no one's going to want to buy it off of you if it's like, well, but the company went out of business and there's no service centers.
Right. Well, and I mean, even an established car maker like one that isn't, familiar to us Americans, like Skoda or even maybe Citroën or something like that, you might go like, yeah, I don't know. Like, right. I haven't seen them around, so I don't know if I'm that interested in it.
Yeah, because I mean, who's going to know how to service it?
Right.
And where are you going to get parts?
Right.
So if you're like, Zach and Jesse, I want to know about disruptive companies, especially ones I can invest in. Well, let's turn to a company that is truly disruptive.
Zach and I traveled to New York City over the weekend to join Monogram Orthopedics in ringing the closing bell on NASDAQ. Monogram went public on May 18th on NASDAQ with the ticker symbol MGRM.
Now, you might remember we covered Monogram Orthopedics here on Disruptive Investing about a month ago during their final crowdfunding round. We interviewed their two founders, Ben Sexton and Dr. Doug Eunice.
We also did an in-depth over on our Now You Know channel where I got to perform a robotic knee surgery.
Dr. Jesse, yes, I remember that. And look, disclaimer, Jesse and I are not financial advisors. You should do your own research. And we are early investors from Monogram Orthopedics crowdfunding round, and we're long on Monogram. So take all of that into account when you hear us talk about them. But it can be easy for investors to forget during these depressing market days that as investors, we have to always be on the lookout for buying opportunities. You just can't get so depressed that you're like, forget it, I'm not going to invest until things are better again, because then everything's going to be expensive. So when you walk into a store and everything is on sale, you should take a good look to find if there's any bargains, even for things you may not need at the moment. A bear market tends to pull everything down with it, especially new companies that nobody knows anything about. Monogram. So Monogram is developing a robot that can perform orthopedic surgeries. Even at this early stage before FDA approval, the robot is so good that Jesse performed a flawless knee surgery. And this isn't to put you down, but this is just to say you've never done a surgery before.
Just so you know, I went to school for engineering, and we typically deal with, plastics and metal and that kind of thing. We don't deal with bone or cutting people open or, bone saws or anything like that. I've had some woodworking experience, but I'm pretty sure if you had given me a sagittal saw and tell me to go to town, I would have
botched it.
I would have absolutely, they would have to cut off someone's leg.
Right.
Now, we did this all on a cadaver, so it's not, nothing bad was going to happen, but we did a perfect knee surgery. Right. I did a perfect knee surgery. I was in control of the robot. Right. The robot did most of the work. And
you had no practice. Thinking. It wasn't like you did it 3 times before it.
Right.
Look, I have so much more to say, but I think that we'll do that on Now You Know's Patreon Investor Club bonus stories this week. So head on over to Patreon, support us there, the work that we do, and we'll reward you with stories every week that only our Investor Club gets.
So we called it.
Yes, we did. Lordstown Motors, the company working on the Endurance all-electric pickup truck in Lordstown, Ohio, they have been struggling, and their stock price has been pummeled as their deal with Foxconn seems to be falling apart.
Here is their stock chart. RIDE, R-I-D-E, is their ticker symbol. They announced a 15-to-1 reverse stock split last Tuesday after stockholders approved it.
So to remind everyone, under NASDAQ rules, companies on their exchange have to maintain stock prices above $1. If they drop below that for 30 consecutive trading days, they risk getting delisted.
So by doing this reverse split, Lordstown gets to keep trading. That's why their stock price is now $3.61 versus 25 cents the week before.
Yeah, the reverse split went into effect on May 24th. So if you had, let's say, 30 shares, you now have 2 shares.
What if I only had 1 share?
Then you either, if your account allowed it, you'd get a fractional share, or if it doesn't, they would have sold it off and given you the cash.
Great.
Right.
A whole 25 cents.
Right.
Oh boy.
Here you go.
25 cents.
But there's probably like a $15 fee, so you're probably in the red.
Probably in the hole. But you shouldn't have been buying single shares anyway.
Yeah, you can.
I don't know. It depends.
When I was a kid, I was part of a early blueprint program on Merrill Lynch where you could buy fractional shares. It was the first time. And it was fun to buy $25 worth of stock, and you'd get, 0.07 shares of AT&T or something,
Right. Now, Lordstown has only produced 56 endurance trucks, and of those, it has only delivered 18 to customers.
Yeah, Foxconn had $165 million in cash as of April 30th, and it looks like they're burning about $11 million a month. I did a little math there, so I could be off, but roughly. So just my opinion here, but I highly doubt that Lordstown can pull this out. It just doesn't seem like with all these electric pickup trucks coming out now from other manufacturers that you would be just scrambling over to Endurance to buy theirs. There's nothing about it that really stands out anymore. In the beginning, it had 4 motors. And it was like, wow, quad motor. Well, Rivian has that. And in the beginning, it was like, we're going to come out first. And now there's not the first. Yes. And also, just looking at the fact that like Foxconn seems to be losing interest. You got to be thinking about service. Like if they had done everything right, maybe, but I don't know. And what are your thoughts, guys?
Yeah. I think especially you have to be thinking if they go out of business and you have this truck
right,
and something breaks.
It better be endurance-y or else you're going to need parts.
You're going to need parts no matter what.
I mean, what are you going to do? Like make it look like a Rivian, drive it onto the lot and be like, can you help fix this? And this next story may sound like we just repeated the last story,
This is an electric truck company that's about to get delisted.
but we're not talking about Lordstown again. Now we're talking about Nikola Corporation.
Yeah, Nikola's stock price has dipped below the $1 mark.
It was 59 cents a share early this week.
It fell 20% on May 25th and has now been below that $1 threshold for over 30 consecutive trading days.
So NASDAQ issued them a written notice that they aren't in compliance, and they have until November 20th to regain compliance, which would be getting above $1 a share for 10 consecutive business days.
And if you haven't heard of Nikola before, congratulations. You've saved yourself a lot of heartache. This company has been I don't like them.
Look, I like to cover it, though, because I think it's a classic tale of disaster and of snake oil salesmen. And I think that it's important for you as an investor to at least know about it so you can spot it when it happens again. We had a very strong salesman founder, and that's typical. A lot of founders are good salesmen, but he was, I don't know, if looking back in hindsight, I think it's obvious for all of us to see that a lot of the claims were fake. And then things started to come out about like the truck rolling downhill, not under its own power,
Right.
and all sorts of things where at their grand reveals, it was plugged in, with the extension cord, and just big claims about like how we're going to build out a hydrogen charging network. And he got a lot. What was interesting here, and kind of my push against institutional investors, is that he basically pulled the wool over the eyes of a bunch of institutional people that didn't know anything.
Such as, maybe one that you've heard of, like General Motors.
Yeah. Basically, hey, we've got a pickup truck. And they're like, yeah, we'll invest in you so that we can use that technology. Turns out there wasn't much technology there. And so really was a bad look for GM. I'm surprised. Well, I'm not surprised, but surprised, not surprised that the media didn't cover this better and really hold GM's feet to the fire and say, look, America, look, world. GM didn't know what the hell they were talking about. Instead, I think GM used a lot of their influence to get those stories squashed. But the real story here was that, yeah, GM came along and said, like, yeah, we'll put a lot of money into you guys, when they really had no technology. It was just a salesman selling kind of vaporware, allegedly.
Right.
Trevor Milton is on trial as we speak, and so we'll know more as that trial unfolds. But
And of course, Nikola is trying to separate themselves from Trevor.
But of course, when you've been founded by a charlatan, let's say, allegedly, then it's very hard to remove your company's ethos from that.
And I think that we, Zach and I, kind of, I don't want to say lucked out. Like, I don't think that we were just so smart that we knew that it was this bad. We just knew that we didn't like the hydrogen take. We thought that was... It didn't sound right from the get-go. We don't like hydrogen because it's not as efficient as just pure battery electric.
Well, and it made sense why other big companies were interested in it. They were like, we knew that Tesla couldn't do electric trucks, so this makes sense. Putting a liquid into a vehicle to make it run, we know about that.
Right.
And so it made sense to them, and that's why they invested. And it just shows how little due diligence they do, and why, again, I think crowdfunding is not such a bad idea. The SEC seems to think, well, if you're rich, then you're smart. And it's like, well, this is proven to not be true.
Right.
And unfortunately, a lot of investors said, well, if GM did their due diligence, then I must be good. This shows you how you have to do your own research. So again, disclaimer, we're not financial advisors. Always do your own research. And that's why we have the Investor Club over on Patreon. There, you're going to find our Slack. And if you don't know what Slack is, it's basically a place where, communication app where you can talk to each other. We have different channels and we talk about different things, and you can ask questions. You can show research that you found. And that's how you kind of unearth things and you bring to light things that maybe others didn't know about, because everyone's got their own interests. And we find it super valuable because it's not the whole internet over there.
Yep.
It's people who know what they're talking about.
And it's not even just interests. It's also just like either geographical location or just algorithm. Because sometimes some of the most impactful news pieces are from newspapers that I've never heard of before.
Yeah.
And they got some inside scoop because they have some reporter who got interested in, say Nikola, and they did a little bit of extra digging and extra reporting. And that's news that just isn't anywhere else on the internet. So it's almost like insider information, except it didn't come from the inside.
Right. And it's kind of, same thing with our viewers. Sometimes because, Nikola is in a specific geographical place, people can drive by their plant, see them testing the vehicles, and give their feedback as to what's going on. So it's a super valuable place. I urge you guys to go check it out on our Patreon if you're interested in investing, because you might be like, well, $10 a month. $10 a month, if it gives you just one company that you don't invest in, like Nikola, and I mean, look at that stock chart again. Did you want to be invested in that? I don't think so.
So thank you so much for joining us on Disruptive Investing. This is a channel where we try to bring you interesting news from CEOs and, news every week. I've really been enjoying doing DI news and talking to you guys. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Let us know if there's any companies that you're interested in talking about or talking to, because we, our viewers and our patrons give us that clout to reach out to companies and maybe get some extra information.
You guys give us a lot of good ideas. We reach out all the time to companies that you guys suggest. So thank you for that. We'll see you guys next week
on Disruptive Investing.